Vayeshiv Yaakov Eretz Mugurei Oviv, and Yaakov dwelled in the land of the sojournings of his father, Eretz Canaan, in the land of Canaan. The word Mugurei, the root of the word is ger. Ger is a stranger, although in halachic terms it's a convert, but ger means a stranger. We find that Moshe Rabbeinu, he named his first son Gershom, that he had born to him in Midian. Why did he name some Gershom? He says, Ger ha'isi be'eretz Nachriya. I'm a stranger in an alien land. So the word Ger means a stranger. So when the Torah tells us that Yaakov dwelt in the land of the sojournings of his father, in the land of Canaan. So over here, the Rebbeinu Bachya makes it a point that the Avos HaKadoshim, the holy patriarchs, the way they lived their lives in this existence, the existence itself had no value. It was only basically a location of sojourning. They're here for a reason. Once that reason is accomplished, it's only a medium to achieve whatever that accomplishment has to be done. But they were not there for the location. They were there only for the value of the location to facilitate and bring about the result of what's needed to bring about of that. I once mentioned the story of the Chofetz Chaim, where there was a very wealthy Jew, and Rabbeinu Bachya gives literally the same allegory. A wealthy Jew heard so much about the Chofetz Chaim, he wanted to visit the Chofetz Chaim, he's world renowned, and he travels to this small village called Radin, and he comes to the Chofetz Chaim's home, and he's like taken aback of the sparse furnishings, rickety table, that one chair didn't match the other, the bookcase, just a few boards knocked together with a few books on the shelves. The furnishings he was like taken aback. He thought this world-renowned rabbi would live in something which would be palatial. So he says to the rabbi, I'm really surprised. I thought you'd be in a more appropriate setting, physical, in the material sense. So the Chofetz Chaim says to him, he was a very wealthy man. He says, by the way, where are you staying? In Rodden. He says, I'm staying at an inn down the road. He says, could you describe to me the setting of the room? He says, well, the carpet's faded. The springs are coming out of the mattress. The drapes are shredded. The washstand, the basin, the handle is broken off. So the Chofetz Chaim says, a man of your wealth, do you stay in such a location? So he says to the Chofetz Chaim, Rabbi, but I'm only passing through. So Chofetz Chaim says, I'm also only passing through. So Rabbeinu Bachya, who's an early commentator, says the exact same thing, gives the same allegory. For Yitzchak, for the Avos HaKadoshim, they were only passing through. They were ger. Regarding the physical world, the material world, they're not here for the world itself. It was a means, it wasn't an end unto itself. The Yosef Yaakov Eretz Mugurei Oviv, he came to the land of sojournings of his father. Identically, the value of the land itself was only a location to serve Hashem. Outside of that, had no other value. So over here, Rashi says something interesting. Rashi says that after the Torah had described the location of Edom, the families of Edom, in a very cursory, abbreviated way, then it speaks about Yaakov in a very lengthy way. So the Medrash gives an example, explains it with an allegory. A person knows there's a diamond or a pearl somewhere within the sand. So what does he do? He starts sifting the sand to try to locate the diamond or the pearl. Once he locates that pearl or the diamond, he throws away the sand. Hashem, in the Torah, he goes through generations. There were 10 generations from Adam to Noah. He quickly, this one lived so long, 10 generations. And the Torah doesn't discuss in detail who these people were. It's only to get to where we want to arrive. The Torah speaks of Noach. Then the Torah goes and speaks in a more specific and elaborates, lengthy manner about Noach. And again, we start with Noach. Again, we pass through 10 generations. We come to Avram. The Torah focuses on Avram. Who was Avram? All the aspects of his life. And now we speak about Esau. He had so many, the princes and where they were and how they conquered. This doesn't get into the details, the specifics. And after we speak about Esau, now we speak of Yaakov in a very specific way. All the aspects, all the interactions, himself and his family and the people in that particular region. Again, because all that makes a difference to Hashem are the tzaddikim, all these other people. He goes and he, in a cursory way, just passes over them, and then he focuses, because these people is what to learn from and what to extrapolate from, and these are the people which give value to existence. That's Rashi over here. So he explains, because they have special value before Hashem, therefore he speaks lengthily about them. So I had a little bit of a question. It's not a question. The answer is obvious. We find that according to, it's a question in the Midrash, if the Ur Kasdim, the kiln of where Avram was thrown into the kiln, if that was one of the tests, 10 tests. He was given an ultimatum, either about to die or we go to the kiln. Avram went to the kiln, came out alive miraculously. But even if you, of the opinion, it's not one of the tests, but it was something which shows tremendous sacrifice on Avram's part. He had no obligation to give his life, and he gave his life. And the Torah doesn't, only alludes to it. The kiln of Kasdim. So we need the Torah Sheba'al Peh, we need the oral law to elucidate what that was. Why does the Torah say it explicitly? Seemingly, as we're discussing now, it has such great value to understand how Avram gave his life for the sake of monotheism and not to bow to the idol. Although halachically he was a ben Noach, he was a Noahide, he was permitted. So the Ramban explains, seemingly according to what we're saying now, when we speak about the tzaddikim, Hashem elaborates and gets into the details. So Ramban writes over there, because whenever it comes to describe, speaking about idolatry, regardless of what Avram had done, which puts Avram on a pedestal of being special, the Torah doesn't want to focus on idolatry. Therefore, it just glosses over it. Anything that has the representation of that level of negativity, the Torah doesn't want to discuss explicitly in a specific manner. So even though it was special, it's alluded to, and it's alluded to, if you wouldn't know what it was, what the kiln of Kasdim was, you wouldn't know it had any relevance to anything special to Avram. But because of the consequence of being exposed to that information, it could actually have a negative effect. The Torah doesn't speak about it explicitly. But where it does speak about and elaborates, we speak about the tzaddikim. We speak of Noach, we speak about Avram, we speak about Yaakov. Therefore, over here the Torah goes to elaborate on what? On Yaakov's life and all the interactions of what happened to Yaakov.
Rabbi.
Which is famous. Davar Acher, the Yeshiv Yaakov. The Torah juxtaposes Yaakov and the whole story with Esau. He was confronted with Esau. And the Torah speaks about the families, the princes, and the kings. There were 8 kings of the Edomite kingdom before the kings of Israel. She would say, how do we stand up against these people? Edomite, Esau is the antithesis of Yaakov. He sworn to destroy Yaakov. So the Midrash, Rashi says the Midrash, it's compared to the person who has camels loaded with flax, overloaded with the flax. And the person who has the camel wants to go into a blacksmith to get the camel shoed, put some kind of shoe on its on its hoof. But the camel, because the load is so wide, how do you get through the door of the blacksmith if you don't want to unload the camel? So there was a person there who thought he was wise. He said, no problem. Once spark comes out of the blacksmith's fire, which he heats the shoe, and it ignites the flax, there's no longer flax. You have nothing to worry about it. You have a problem with the flax? No problem. One spark is able to consume the whole flax. That's a wise guy remark. So over here, Yaakov is confronted. We find that Yaakov worked 14 years for his two wives. What happened after the 14th year? The Torah tells us Yosef was born. Rachel gave birth to Yosef. Yaakov says to Lavan, I want to leave. The moment Yosef was born, he says, I want to leave. Why did he want to leave at that moment? Because who is the antagonist of Esau? So Rashi over there cites a pasuk from Ovadia, which we just read in this past week's Haftorah. Beis Yaakov is Eish. Beis Yosef is Lehova. The house of Jacob is fire. The house of Yosef is a flame. Ubeis Edom is Kash. And the house of Edom is straw. If you have a fire, how do you attach the fire to the straw? You have to have a flame which reaches out. Who is the flame that reached out to destroy Edom? That's Yosef. Meaning, doesn't mean Yosef is going to fight the battle. But once Yosef came into existence and was part of the sons of Yaakov, that level of representation was that Yaakov now had the ability to counter Esau. And he was no longer concerned. Because Yosef is the Lahova. He is the flame. So the same thing here. Therefore, we speak about Yosef. We speak about Yosef is the key to be able to deal with what? With Edom. The Gemara tells us in Bava Basra that every battle that we ever had with Amalek or Edom, it was always from the progeny of Yosef were there. Progeny of Yosef is what? The progeny of Rachel. The Gemara tells us, Ein zaro shel Esav nofel al b'yad zaro shel Rachel. The progeny of Esav can only fall within the hands of the progeny of Rachel. It's either Binyamin. Binyamin was the son of Rachel, or Yosef's children, Ephraim and Menashe. The first battle against Amalek, who led the battle against Amalek, which you read right after Kriyas Yamsuf, that was Yeshua ben Nun. Yeshua was from the tribe of Ephraim. That's Yosef. Shaul HaMelech, the story of Purim. Shaul is Yemini. He's from the tribe of Benjamin. So that's Amalek. Throughout history, all the confrontations we had with Amalek or with Edom, always the progeny of Rachel were always involved in those battles, and only because of that we were able to be victorious. That's a Zaro Shel Esau Novel El B'Zai. Yeah, Zaro Shel Rachel. They fall into the hands of the progeny of Rachel. So Yosef is the ultimate antagonist who's able to consume Edom. So we once spoke about what exactly is Rachel. It doesn't say Ein Esav Nofel Biad Zaro Shel Yosef. It's Zaro Shel Rachel. It's the progeny of Rachel. What did Rachel represent? And therefore, her children had the same level of representation. And as a result of that, every battle with Amalek or with Edom, it had to be the progeny of Rachel. It's very interesting. When Yaakov came to the well and he saw Rachel, who's the shepherdess of her father, he immediately knew that she was his soulmate. And she is the primary matriarch. He knew this immediately. He'd say, he knew it. He sensed her soul, her spiritual makeup, and he knew that she was the matriarch. Which is okay. That's a reality. But it's interesting. She is the matriarch that only whenever there's a confrontation with Israel and Amalek or Edom, it's her progeny have to be involved in that confrontation. So when we speak about a Kol Yaakov, Yadayim Yadei Esav, The voice is the voice of Jacob, and the hands of Esau. It's only because part of Yaakov is Rachel, because she is the true soulmate of Yaakov. Rachel has a certain representation, and because of that representation, Yaakov in his own right is not able to go against Esau. As pure and as holy he is, he's only Aish. You need the lahava, you need the flame. Rachel represents the flame. Yosef is the equivalent of the flame. He's the lahava. And because he's lahava and Esau is kash, he's straw, so the flame reaches out and consumes the straw. But what is it all about? So we once explained, what does Yaakov represent and what does Esau represent? Yaakov represents the spiritual world. Esau represents the physical world. As the Torah describes who he is, Ishoder, he's the man of the field, he's a hunter, he's that physical being. He represents physicality in the most exaggerated, extensive way. Physical might, power. Yaakov's Ishtam Yoshev Holim, the pure person, simple person, committed to the tent of Torah, disconnected from all the material. Rachel, the Torah immediately describes her. She's the Yifas Torah of the Yifas Mareh. She has beauty, one of a kind of beauty. Yosef, her son, had one of a kind of beauty. The Gemara tells us that Yosef was the most beautiful human being who ever lived. His beauty is one of a kind. What is beauty? How does beauty manifest itself in the physical sense? The physicality of Rachel was something which was not to be described in terms of the context of beauty. What did she do with that beauty? She took that beauty and she subjugated it and subordinated it for the sake of spirituality. She dominated the physicality. Despite the fact of this extensive, advanced level of physicality, the beauty, she subjugated it to what? To spirituality. So she put the cap on it. She had the control over that. Esau is the physical, represents physicality in the most exaggerated level. Esau was consumed with physicality. He wasn't able to dominate physicality. Physicality dominated him. Rachel was physicality at this very advanced level, the epitome of beauty, and she subjugated, subordinated it, and consecrated it to serve Hashem. As a result of that, the one who's the antagonist of Esau is Rachel. That's why Rachel was essential, that she should be the soulmate of Yaakov, that together with the Torah is Eish. As it says, Kodvar Koeshtum Hashem, the Torah is fire. But fire is not enough to consume the Edom, the Esau. You need the flame. Who's the flame? The flame is the physicality that was what? That was on the most advanced level, that was subordinated and subjugated to the Torah itself. Therefore, the children of Rachel, Yosef, who's the epitome of beauty, when he was born, he is the flame, and therefore Yaakov has nothing to be concerned with any longer to be able to deal with and confront Esau for that reason. Just one moment. We find that of the three patriarchs, it says Avram Tikin Shachris, Yitzchak Tikin Mincha, and Yaakov Tikin Arvis. Each one of the patriarchs actually enacted one of the daily services. Shachris, Mincha, Ma'ariv. Now, what is Arvis? Arvis is night. Of the three patriarchs, who was the Av? Who was the patriarch representing Godus? Of all the Avos HaKadoshim, the one who was in exile more than any of them was Yaakov. From the age of 63 onward, he fled and he came back with his family. Then Yosef disappears, and he spends the last years of his life in Egypt, passes away in Egypt, in Golus. What is Golus? The Gemara tells us that night represents Golus. The Rambam rules in Hilchos Talmud Torah that if a person has a choice to learn during the daytime or the nighttime, the primary learning should be at nighttime if you have a choice. If you have a choice, day or night, and you can learn as well at night as during the day, nighttime is a better time. Why? Because we find when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, the first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, we read in Eicha that Yirmiyah Navi, who's the author of Eicha, writes, Kumi Roni Balayla. He said, he writes there, and he tells the Jews, Kumi Roni Balayla, rise and sing out at night. These are the words of Rambam. Ein Rina El Torah. What is the song of the Jew? Rina is Torah. What does that mean? When you go to Golus and we have questions which are not to be understood, overwhelming, questions which consume us, how do you deal with all that? With all these unanswered questions, which normally could actually consume a person. Kumi Roni Balayla. By rising, Laila is Golus. If you want to deal with the Golus where everything is distorted and ambiguous, you want to illuminate that darkness, Kumi Roni Balayla. Rise, Ein Rina El Torah. This is the pasuk in Mishlei, Ner Mitzvah Torah Or. What is the illuminator? The illuminator is the Torah itself. I'll give you an example. It doesn't mean to say if you have Torah, you have the answer. You don't have the answer. I always used to say, a person who has a question about the Holocaust, and the question bothers him, that person has a problem, because there's no answer. But there are many things in life we don't understand, but we can live with them. If you have the Torah, that gives you that sense that whatever Hashem does is, Hashem is dynamis. It's not just you accept it. You have the capacity to accept. It creates a certain trust in Hashem. Whatever he does, it's equitable and it's just. Could you figure it out why? I have no idea. But if a person is spiritualized as a result of the Torah, the question is not a question. Do you have an answer? It's not. I don't have an answer, but the question is not a question. Golus, they're endless questions. The only way you could survive Golus, the Churban Abayis, the destruction of Beis HaMikdash, we went to Bavel. Al Naris Bavel, Sham Bachinu, Sham Yashav Nagam Bachinu. We sat there, we cried. Doesn't make a difference. Kumi Roni Balayla. If you get involved and you sing the song of Torah and you imbibe the Torah, you're able to deal with it. With all the issues, all the overwhelming issues, it minimizes the issues. Do you have answers? No. But one thing you know, Hashem is dynamis. And that's what it's about. Yaakov, being the Av of Torah, he is the patriarch representing Torah. He's Yaakov Shtam Yoshev Olim. Tikkun Arvis. Arvis is night. He's the Av of Golus. Okay? Now, what is Golus? If you have a coal, a fire doesn't illuminate. If you have a flame illuminates. Yosef is the Lahava. He's the flame. He reaches out. You have a dormant coal, even though it glows, it doesn't give off much light. But if there's a flame, the flame gives off light. Yosef is the illuminator. Yosef was the one who prepared us for the exile of Egypt. Yosef was Mashpir. He was the physical, he oversaw the physicality of Egypt, and he sustained the world, and he guaranteed, and he prepared Klal Yisrael for that Golus, that lengthy exile, which we nearly destroyed, spiritually speaking. But without his initial preparation and Yaakov being there, we wouldn't have survived it. But that's Yosef, because Yosef is the son of Rochel, who represents physicality, but that physicality is purely dedicated to spirituality, was totally subjugated to it, Therefore, Esav, which represents the ultimate, the epitome of physicality, actually will be dominated by Yosef. Therefore, when Yosef was born, he's the Lahava. Yaakov decided at that moment to leave Lavan's home, and then Lavan negotiated a deal with him to keep him there for another 6 years. Chazal tell us, based on the Pasuk Mishlei, Yaakov made a mistake. He shouldn't have alerted Esav that he's coming. He should have bypassed him. But because he was like, the word paranoid, I don't want to say, about what Esav was, he grabbed hold of the ears of the rabid dog. He grabbed the ears of the rabid dog, and the dog is sleeping, you wake him up. Now you have to be worried not to be bitten by that dog. And that's exactly what Yaakov had done when he sent the agents to seek out his friendship, or to make an evaluation. He reignited that hate that Esav had. Yaakov was the farthest thing from Esav's mind at that time. So he didn't take the most direct route. I mean, he was going, well, Esav then came towards him. Esav was in Har Seir. But when he sent the messengers, Esav marched towards him, which was in Canaan. Okay. I had mentioned last week that the Balaturim writes, not last week's Parsha, it says, when Yaakov was born, it says, Vayikra Shmo Yaakov. He called his name Yaakov. So one interpretation, Rashi says, who named Yaakov? Hashem named Yaakov. He wasn't named by his parents. So we made a point that everyone on the other side of the ocean, Avram was named by God. His name was Avram. Avraham, that name change came through Hashem. It will no longer be called Avram, you're Avraham. Yitzchak, Hashem says the child who's going to be born to you, he should be called Yitzchak. Yaakov, the Yikra Shema Yaakov, Hashem called him Yaakov. Okay? Even though it has this connotation of being underhanded, like it says, Vayakvedi said, Pamayim, he misled me twice, but Yaakov was given by Hashem. Now, the name Yaakov, I had mentioned then, the Balaturim over there, that location says, Yaakov b'gematria Malech Elokim. Yaakov numerically is Malech Elokim. That's what lies within Yaakov. We read last week that Yaakov fought with an angel. Who was the angel? This was the archangel of Esav. They fought till morning, and Yaakov was victorious. I mean, how does a human being fight with an angel? How do you survive it? The answer is Yaakov wasn't just an ordinary human being. Yaakov, the Gematria, is Malach Elokim. So it was a Malach Elokim fighting against another Malach representing something else, which was the antithesis of what Yaakov was. This is the Koach HaKedusha, the good versus evil. And Yaakov was victorious. Once he had victory, then he became Yisrael. Yisrael means he went beyond the Yaakov. Because now we can first see there's going to be a continuous interchange between Yaakov and Yisrael. We are the Bnei Yisrael. Klal Yisrael is known as Bnei Yisrael. We're not known as Bnei Yaakov. We happen to be Bnei Yaakov, but that's biologically speaking. But in terms of our spiritual destiny and our spiritual value, we're Bnei Yisrael. That we surpassed, we overcame the physical and the spiritual. That's Sarisam Lakim V'Odim. You lorded over God and man, and you succeeded. The Malach and Esav and Lavan. That's Edom. Because we can see it in this moment. Edla told us Yaakov Yosef. These are the chronicles of Yaakov Yosef. Ben Shvas Shona Hayeros Echov Batzon. He shepherded his brothers with the sheep. He was the lead shepherd. Unaris b'nei Bilav is b'nei Zilpa. And he befriended or reacted with a degree of immaturity We'll see in a moment. Because the Bnei Zilpah, the children of Bilhah and Zilpah, what were they? They were the children of the concubines. So the other brothers held they were like second class. So they, to a degree, shunned them. Yosef, being the son of the ultimate matriarch, he brought them close. Bnei Bilhah as Bnei Zilpah, Neshei Aviv. It's interesting. They're referred to as Neshei Aviv. Even though they were his wives, even though they were the maidservants initially, but when he fathered children from them, they were his wives. They were not just maidservants. And Yosef brought all the negative reports to his father, reporting on his brothers, their behavior on many levels. And this is attributed to his level of immaturity, because he should have verified what he had believed was such, which was not such. But immediately, whenever he saw some level of basis for criticism, he brought it to his father immediately. I mean, if you want to, Rashi says, Odunar, Rashi Kunar Shoyose Masa Narus. He behaved like a youth. What is that? Misaking Misaro. He was preoccupied making his hair have a certain look. Mashish Beinov, his eyes, he beautified his eyes. They Shia Niri Yofer. That he should appear very beautiful and handsome. Understand? Could you imagine? Could you imagine Moshe Rabbeinu doing this? Or the Vilna Gaon doing this? Or any person who represents holiness? Yosef was the most special child of Yaakov. And at the age of 17, he's busy going to, his hairdresser and having the beautician do his eyes. She Niri Yofer, that he should appear beautiful. What's this all about? We mentioned, the Gemara tells us Yosef is the most beautiful person who ever lived. He was the son of Rachel. She was the most beautiful woman. She's one of the 4 or 5 most beautiful women ever lived, Rachel Imenu. And we just explained, what was she? Although she was the epitome of beauty, she subjugated and subordinated that to what? To serve Hashem, to holiness. She consecrated it all. Yosef has a similar representation. Although he is the epitome of beauty, he's Yosef HaTzadik. You have to understand the value of what he is. So unless you appreciate his beauty, in terms of his level of representation, it's not appreciated. You can only understand his level of representation if you see him in that beautiful context. It's like amazing. He has beauty like one of a kind, and yet he radiates holiness like his father. He was Ben Zekunim lo, as it says, Bar Chakim lo. He was the wisest. All that he had studied in Shem Ve'ever, all the secrets of the Torah, he gave over to Yosef, did not give over to the other children. He had a spiritual capacity which his other children did not have. But what's all this beautification? The answer is because he has the same representation as his mother. Although he's that physical being, he has the ability to deal and contend with all physical challenges and to overcome them, which the other brothers did not have. And therefore, he was able to go to Egypt and survive as a lone person without any support system, because he has that representation of physicality, and he has the ability to subordinate physicality to spirituality. That's Yosef. Unar. But it says, what's Esbnei Bilhah? Klom of Rogel, Eitzel de Bilhah, Fishahi Echov, Mevazan Osan Hu Mekarvan. The brothers would disgrace them because they were like second class, and he would bring them close. Read last week, there was a tragedy. What was the tragedy? that after Rachel passes away, Yaakov takes his bed and puts it into the tent of Bilah.
Reuven.
No, Yaakov put his bed. Yaakov put his bed into the tent of Bilah. Reuven realizes what happens, and without consulting with his father, he takes his father's bed and puts it in the tent of his mother, who's a matriarch. Bilah was not a matriarch because he was offended. He says, my mother is maybe secondary to Rachel, but she's not secondary to the concubine. Therefore, he took it personal without consulting with his father. He took the bed of Yaakov, put it in the tent of Leah. And the Torah refers to this as Vayishkav Ruvain as Pitlegish Oviv. It's if he cohabited with the concubine of his father. That's how serious it was. Doesn't mean, God forbid, he had relations with her, but it had that level of seriousness. So there's the obvious question. If Leah is the mother of 6 of his sons, and Leah is the matriarch, why did Yaakov put his bed in the tent of Bilah, who's a concubine, who's the maidservant of Rachel, and not in the tent of Leah? Seemingly, Reuven was right. It's true. He should have consulted. But evidently, if Yaakov didn't put his bed in the tent of Bilah, that was his appropriate location. But why was it? To be able to raise Yosef to be who he was supposed to be, to contend with all the physicality of the world and subordinated. The only one who was able to do that was Rachel, or she herself was that. She mentored Bilah, being a maidservant. So the only one who was able to develop and raise Yosef and to fine-tune him to be able to deal with all those issues was only Bilah. So it's not that he shunned Leah, because the ultimate destiny of the Klal Yisrael depends on Yosef, because he's going to lead them into exile. He's going to prepare for the exile of Egypt. That's who Yosef is. So for Yosef to be developed, to meet his potential, Yaakov has to be together with Bilah overseeing his development as a mother, and Yaakov being there as the father. The combination of both. Reuven didn't understand that. And the brothers didn't understand that. The innate value of Yosef. And as a result of that, all this strife and this terrible things went on between them, even though Yosef was responsible for many of this, because he acted immaturely regarding bringing tale-bearing and all that, but nevertheless, Yosef was the key, and he was the apple of the eye of his father for that reason.
It almost makes his tale-bearing.
Yosef was raised by Bilah. Now the brothers go and they treat his so-called brothers, which he was only half their brother, as secondary. But if his mother is the equivalent of Bilah as his mother, excuse me. So if that's the case, he has that special relationship with Bilah's children. That's why he's Nar b'nei Bilah b'nei Zilpah. Even despite the fact that he's the so-called son of the ultimate matriarch, but because of Bilah's value to him, that she developed him, she mentored him, and he was what he was to bring out his potential. Therefore, despite that, he stood up for them and he protected them to give them that special level of value. Okay, I think we're going to stop here in the Chumash.
Rabbi.
Rabbi, I just have